Video game world boss slammed as flop by Sunny V2.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, and everything else in between, today we've got a truly original topic. No more H3, iDubbbz, Hassan today, no more iMalix. We are talking about the one, the only LazarBeam. Now, there is quite a bit of context to get into when we are talking about today's situation, or more accurately, today's response. All the drama, controversy, and everything we're going to be speaking about today all revolves around a game LazarBeam and his friend and fellow content creator Fresh released.
I'm making a game. World Boss. So Fresh and myself have teamed up with developers to make a game. Hopefully this will make Fresh upload. I have to stress it is very early in development. Things are very basic. So this is World Boss. Clearly it's the best looking game you've ever seen. The game is very colorful. We had to think of those clickbait YouTube thumbnails. I want those views. You can play the game now in early access on Steam. It is free to play. But now we need you guys to play the game. Give us your feedback. Tell us what you like, you don't like. We got mixed reviews on Steam because the game kept crashing, but we fixed it. And the goal of the game is simple. Get #1 on the leaderboard, become the world boss!
Now, unfortunately, although LazarBeam wanted people to play the game, not many people played the game, which led to a Sunny V2 video calling LazarBeam's game a flop. And again, a little bit of background for people who maybe are unaware of who Sunny V2 is, although he absolutely dwarfs the subscriber count of this channel. You know, we've still got to fill in the generalized audience who maybe just watched LazarBeam and have clicked on this video. Sunny V2 makes documentary, commentary, video, essay content, and decided to cover LazarBeam's game. Here is a snippet from the intro of this video.
People thought LazarBeam's video game could be the next Fortnite, but with only 10 people playing at any one time, and comments calling it the worst game I've installed, something clearly went wrong. It all began with this tweet here. I am making a game. I ain't telling you anything.
Sunny V2's video went from the beginning of the game's development, the announcement, even detailing things like the monthly players and how many people played on launch.
10 million viewers learning about the free game. It achieved an opening peak of just a little over 1,000 players. The month after it was 800, then 300 the month after that, showing that the game clearly had some problems.
So not only were there loads of issues with this game in general, not many people were really playing it because of that, nobody was really interested in the game, it failed to get any type of hype, and there was even a controversy around it being that there were microtransactions in the game whilst it really wasn't receiving many updates.
Foggy. It seems the only thing that did work well was the World Boss in-game item shop.
Despite the fact that the game launched in a broken and unfinished state, it had full-on microtransactions on day one.
Good to know that despite the terrible condition this game is in, they prioritized adding microtransactions over playability. Obviously, this wasn't really Fresh and Lazar's fault, however, their promotional activities weren't perfect either.
But ultimately, this game was a pretty big failure. It didn't have the success that probably LazarBeam and Fresh thought it would. It didn't really go to plan. Of course, this isn't a big drama situation. LazarBeam and Fresh haven't massively messed up here. They just made a subpar game with other people, with other companies they partnered with to make, you know, a less than good game. But recently, LazarBeam actually responded to Sunny V2's video through a recent interview with the co-founder of Dexerto. Of course, in this interview, LazarBeam speaks about a lot of things. It's 40 minutes. It isn't just about this failed video game world boss that him and Fresh did, but of course, in this video, we're only going to be focusing on that specific section. So, without further ado, let's see what LazarBeam had to say in response to the controversy around World Boss.
LazarBeam video game world boss slammed as flop by Sunny V2. I mean, he's always been nice to me for the most part, so, you know, it's fine. I did watch it with captions. I didn't get to watch the actual video.
Could you tell us a little bit about what he's referencing here?
It's always really fascinating and interesting to see the type of response that a content creator will give in reaction to bad press, a negative review, a negative type of video made about them. And from what I've seen from this response, LazarBeam has taken it in his stride. It isn't a bad response by any means. It's actually a pretty good response. So, you know, I'm pretty excited to get into this because usually the responses that we take a look at on this channel are, you know, the horrific Colleen Ballinger type.
So I made a game a few years ago, partnered with Playside to make a game called World Boss, you know, and making a game is a very difficult thing. So it's not always successful. You see studios spend hundreds of millions of dollars and their game doesn't work out.
I do like how transparent LazarBeam is being off the rip. He isn't trying to cope, he isn't trying to cover it up or give a PR answer. You know, he's just being honest. Yeah, games fail in the gaming industry, and unfortunately this was a failure. Even in situations like this that don't have high stakes or aren't as serious, it's always good to just be as transparent as possible. There's no reason not to be as transparent, because, you know, there's nothing good that can come from not being transparent.
And, you know, game didn't fully work out is really the end of it. Yeah, a lot of people sort of really enjoy sort of shitting on you when you have something that doesn't work out.
I mean, yeah, I agree to a certain extent here. Of course, there's lots of people online that thrive off of negativity. If somebody's project or somebody's thing that they're working on doesn't go to plan, of course, you are going to get the haters come out in droves. People using that as an opportunity to dunk on you. However, I don't think that's what Sunny V2 was doing. I'm not saying that's necessarily what LazarBeam is saying here, but of course, this is in relation to Sunny V2's video. I think Sunny V2 was just trying to tell a story around LazarBeam's game, right? Trying to tell a story of what happened from beginning to end, and unfortunately, that includes the game being a failure, not being a success, or as big a success as LazarBeam and Fresh and the company that they worked with probably wanted. And of course, you are going to get people that are going to rightfully critique this project. This is a public project, and if there are issues with the game, there are issues within the game itself, people are going to openly critique it, leave bad reviews, and talk about it online, because it's been made by popular content creators, and it just might not be up to par.
And I tend to just blind myself, just not listen to it, but yeah, no, there's been a lot of people that like to go, oh my god, it didn't do well.
I mean, yeah, this is a pretty good approach to a certain extent. Of course, when you're such a big content creator and when you just upload content in general, you really can't respond to every single comment. You can't show that that is getting under your skin, because that will make people want to do it more, and you will inevitably go insane and have a crash out, and then people will just keep getting under your skin. You just, ignore people and move on. There is no point responding to every single hate comment and piece of criticism online. That's just not going to do anything for you, and it's going to make it easy for people to target you. But here, I do think being transparent and responding to some of the criticism and some of the hate probably would have done LazarBeam a good, done a benefit, or to the certain extent that he could respond to it, because of course he is partnered with other companies on this game. So probably he couldn't say too much, but he should just be transparent as possible, which seems like what he's trying to do here.
I'm like, so.
Yeah, exactly. So where did the idea of the game come about? Was it something that you were interested in doing, or were you approached? Or
yeah, I mean, I was working with my friend Fresh at the time, and we were doing lots of stuff together. Plus, our management was in the same building, and I think I always wanted to make something. I was always thinking okay, making YouTube videos is sick, but what's other things we could do? I love the idea of doing other things.
I mean, yeah, and there is literally no harm in trying to do things. You learn from your mistakes. If your game is bad, you take a look at why it's bad, why it's failed, why it isn't done as well as you think, and then you improve on it for next time if you want to then pursue that further. There is no harm in taking risks with that type of thing, try new projects, try new stuff. Loads of content creators do it all the time.
And, obviously I feel like being a gamer, you think, oh, let's make a game. That's a natural fit.
Yeah.
So I can't remember exactly how it worked out, if we got reached out to, or if we reached out to them. But it was, very much we had ideas presented to us. We presented our ideas. It was a back and forth sort of thing. But I just feel like, you sort of reach a ceiling. I was getting 20 million views a video in 2020. Right. If you look back now at the average views per video back then, it was 20 million. I didn't really feel like there was much more I could do.
I mean, even smaller content creators, it gets to a certain extent where you want to experiment with other content. I have done it myself with all the different channels I have. I mean, the channel you're currently watching was an experiment because I was getting bored with the other stuff that I was doing. I wanted to experiment and see what else could work, what else I could possibly do on the internet. People do that, especially when you upload content for a significant amount of time and you've reached a limit or you've reached your goals. People want to try out new things, and I 100% don't fault LazarBeam here, and I think it's great that he's being this open and this transparent about why the game was created in the first place, how it led up to it, and that, although it wasn't a, big success, it's something that he wanted to do because, he felt like he reached the limit of his YouTube channel.
I don't know, I don't really get motivated too much by I've got to keep hitting these numbers to get certain revenue goals or anything like that. I was I feel like I've climbed this mountain. I don't know, I feel like I wanted to try and climb a different mountain. But
do you think there's a little bit of naivety in that in the games, creating a game?
Of course.
I like here as well that he's immediately just saying, yeah, of course, there was a lot of naivety here because, this is trying to make a game. I like that he's not trying to make excuses. This comes off as a pretty honest and open conversation. This is how you should respond to even things as small as this or big situations as well. You should try and be as transparent as you can possibly be in that certain situation.
I have no fucking clue what I'm doing. But as, you think if you play games, you can make a game, but it's I learned a lot through that process, and it's it's obviously very hard. But like, you don't really get anywhere in life without being a little naive.
And yeah, it very much seems like as well LazarBeam is open to the fact that, yeah, there were mistakes here, we were being naive to a certain extent, and we were just experimenting. It's not like he's trying to shun away from criticism. He's being pretty transparent and being pretty open here.
I was naive
100%.
to think I could be a YouTuber.
Yeah.
And then you just sort of do it every day, keep working hard at it, and I was lucky enough to, it turned out to be the right path for me. But you never, like, you have to be naive. And look, there's 1,000 things I'd do differently and change, and there's things that like were my decisions and other people's decisions. Like, there was a big partnership going on, and there's so many things I'd do differently.
And again, that's another great thing to hear, is LazarBeam recognizes that, there were mistakes here. There were things that, I would 100% do differently, and he's vocalizing that publicly. He's being as transparent as he can possibly be with his audience. That's what you want from a content creator that you want. You want someone to be like this, to be as transparent and be as open as they possibly can in the situation. Because, of course, as LazarBeam will go on to say, there's other companies, so he can't speak too negatively about them because, there are other companies involved in this situation. But it very much seems like he's being as transparent as he can possibly be, which, I 100% respect, especially from a response like this, being put on the spot with, your game flopped, this content creator said this about you, he's managed to keep his composure pretty well here and be pretty open and honest. And he's genuinely right. If you've made it this far into the video, it might sound like I'm glazing LazarBeam's response here, that I'm glazing LazarBeam, and it's not necessarily that, it's just the fact that this is a pretty rare thing nowadays. I haven't seen too many really good responses or acknowledgements of mistakes, even as small things like this, in a while. The one I've seen most recently was probably Sunday's response to his Minecraft server.
But like, you can't like live in that forever. I can't sit here and just be like, like, it's still something I'd like to try again one day, and I'd like to try it again with newfound knowledge. Like with new sort of experience and stuff like that. Because I still think it's something that I'm like passionate about, but it wasn't. Things don't always work out.
What would you have changed about the game?
Oh, there's a million things I can't get into. Like, it's that's a tough one because it's like, there's a lot of partnerships and stuff.
With how open LazarBeam's been, I think everyone can understand that, of course, there are partnerships involved. He can't say certain things for certain different reasons, and, he's being as open as he can possibly be. And I always love covering these types of responses on this channel because, for the most part, it's a pretty positive thing. I'm not having to sit here shit on LazarBeam for how bad his response is, because all round, this is a pretty decent response. He's being transparent. Of course, he can't say all the things that maybe he wants to say or people want him to say because, there are partnerships involved. There are lots of different dynamics going on there. But this is all around a pretty good response. He's, being pretty open with it, which is what we love to see. I love to talk about because, I don't always like to be really negative on this channel. It's nice to cover something that for the most part is pretty harmless and pretty positive. And that's what I'm going to take an assumption with in terms of the microtransactions, the thing that Sunny V2 brought up in his video when other content creators there. I'm going to assume that was more of a partnership thing and not necessarily a LazarBeam thing.
There, I only speak very highly of everyone I worked with, but not every partnership works out, in that sense. But
we're gonna go into our next headline.
And that was LazarBeam's response to his failed game, and in turn, Sunny V2. Again, it was nice to see such a transparent response, things that necessarily he really couldn't respond to or couldn't say because of his partnerships and the people that he has worked with, and simply it just didn't work out. There were lots of dynamics there that just really didn't work out, and I'd love to see what you, the viewer, has to say about this response. Think about all the other responses we've seen, and then think about this one. Please feel free to comment down below all your thoughts on this. I'd love to see what you have to say about this, because I thought for the most part this was a pretty positive thing. Of course, I would love to hear more stuff about the microtransactions and everything else within this game, the failed things, but for obvious reasons LazarBeam can't speak on that, and we probably won't ever get the answer to that. Not that, it's a burning question everyone on the internet really wants to know. Thank you everybody for watching today's YouTube video. Like I said, please feel free to comment down below your thoughts on all of this, and once you're done there, you might as well subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss a future upload. I'm trying to upload a lot more frequently at the moment. I'm really enjoying the content. I'm really gonna as well trying to pad out the videos between, the Hassan stuff and the H3 stuff with other topics like this one, maybe a little bit more niche topics that not other people are covering. I enjoy these type of topics, pretty positive, pretty smaller ones, pretty lightweight topics. There are not really serious stakes involved in this video, and I do hope that you enjoy maybe this more relaxed and chill type video in comparison to, the more serious videos that we've covered recently, like the H3 stuff and the iMalik stuff. But like I said, please feel free to comment down below, subscribe, do all that good stuff, and I've been your host Samuel, and I'll catch you in the next YouTube video.